Hello, good evening, my little ones, and good evening, mamas and papas. A very warm welcome on behalf of Mindseed Preschool and Daycare for this Sunday story time session. So, are we ready to listen to today's story? But before that, I hope all of you, and I mean my babies, have had a cup of milk. In case you haven't, now is the time. Quickly grab one, sit in front of the screen, and enjoy this amazing story that we'll be listening to. So today's story is a folk tale. Yes, I believe and I have a feeling that some of my children already know this story. But nevertheless, sunte hain? Yes? Do you want to meet the character? Now this character of the story, the main character of the story, she is, let's just call her. Ta-da! Yes, she is the Little Red Hen. So the name of the story is the Little Red Hen. Yes, and she used to live on a farm. She used to live in a tiny little village on a farm. Have you heard the rhyme Old MacDonald? I know most of my children know that song. Old MacDonald had a farm, E-I-E-I-O. And on his farm he had some hens, E-I-E-I-O. Yes, so she used to live on a farm, and with her, along with her, she had some other friends. So the other characters in this story are, you have the duck, and what does the duck say? And a quack quack here and a quack quack there. And her second friend, who was the cat. What does the cat say? Meow. And of course, a third friend who used to live on the farm, who was a dog. And the dog says, woo. Okay? All right. So, this little red hen, oh, we are matching. Even I'm wearing red, even she's wearing red. Okay, she is red. All right. So, little red hen, she lived in a farm, and one day she got up and she decided that she wanted to make some bread for herself to eat. You eat bread and jam or bread and butter? Yes, so she decided that she wanted to have some nice, amazing, homemade bread. So for that, she needed some flour, some wheat flour. She wanted to make bread out of wheat flour, okay? So flour means basically atta. This is atta, alright? And wheat is a food grain. Hum khate hain, we eat food grains, right? So this is wheat. So when we make powder out of this wheat, this is what we get. And mama also makes chapatis, no? Mamas, papas, they make chapatis for us, right? Yes. So she decided that she wanted to first make some bread for herself. When she went to check, she said, I want some really nice, good, bread. And for that, I'm going to plant the wheat myself. I am going to go and I'm going to put some seeds and I'm going to plant the wheat myself. She wanted this to be grown in her farm. So, she looked here and there and she thought to herself, I'm going to need some help. Let me go and ask my friends. So, she went to Mr. Duck and she told Mr. Duck, Mr. Duck, Mr. Duck, can you help me plant some wheat? Will you plant some wheat with me? And Duck said, no, you do it yourself. I think this little friend was not very helpful. He said, no, I'm not going to help you. So she said, okay, I'll ask Mr. Cat. So she went to Mr. Cat and she asked Mr. Cat, Mr. Cat, Mr. Cat, will you help me to plant some wheat? And Mr. Cat looked at her and said, meow, no, do it yourself. I guess even Cat was not very helpful. I'm really hoping Mr. Dog is helpful. So she went to Mr. Dog and she was like, Mr. Dog, will you help me to plant some wheat? And Mr. Dog was like, no, do it yourself, Little Red Hen. And they all three said no to her. I don't think that's a very nice thing to do, right? To say no to your friend. But then she was like, okay, I'll go and plant the wheat myself. So she went and she did it all by herself. See, something to learn from Little Red Hen, right? In case you don't get help, you shouldn't get stuck. You should do your things by yourself. Example, putting your toys away. Yeah, so she planted some wheat. Now, after she planted some wheat, after some days, the wheat was a nice goldenish wheat that came out, and she was very happy. Now was the time to cut the wheat. Okay, now plant to bad gaya. Now you have to cut the wheat, right? Yes. So the step number 2 that she had to go ahead with and do is cut the wheat. So again she went to Mr. Duck and she said, Mr. Duck, will you help me to cut the wheat, please? And Mr. Duck was like, quack, quack, no, you do it yourself. Do it yourself. Not a very nice thing to do. So again she went to Cat and she said, Mr. Cat, will you help me to cut the wheat, please? And what do you think Mr. Cat said? Meow, do it yourself. I don't think even Cat was very helpful. So she was like, okay, let me go to Mr. Dog now. So she went to Mr. Dog and she was like, Mr. Dog, will you help me to please cut the wheat? She was very nice. She was like, please. And Mr. Dog was like, no, do it yourself. I'm busy. I need to sleep. I need to rest. Oh, poor little Miss Red Hen. She said, okay, all right. If Mr. Duck is not helping and Cat is not helping and Dog is not helping, then I'll do it by myself. So she went and she worked very, very hard. She was sweating, but she worked very hard and she cut all the wheat. Then after she cut the wheat, she was like, oh, I need to clean the wheat, right? Now that it was all off the plant, she wanted to clean it. So what did she do? She decided to ask for some help again because she thought, it would be too much planting it all by herself, cutting it all by herself. So she thought, okay, fine, I'm going to ask my friends once again. Chalo, ek baar pooch lete hain. So again, she went to Mr. Duck and she was like, Mr. Duck, will you help me to please clean the wheat plant? Will you help me to clean wheat? And Mr. Duck was like, what do you think Mr. Duck said? What do you think Mr. Duck said? Come on, everybody, tell me. Yes! He was like, no! Do it yourself! Then, again, she decided to go to Mr. Cat and she was like, Mr. Cat, will you help me to please clean the wheat? And Cat was like, no! Meow! Do it yourself. Do it yourself. Now, I don't like this behavior, but then, theek hai, they were her friends. They said no. So again, she went to Mr. Dog and she was like, Mr. Dog, please, will you help me to clean the wheat? And Mr. Dog was like, woo. No, do it yourself. Okay, do it yourself. And again, he went to sleep. And poor Little Red Hen, she cut the plant herself, the wheat herself. She had planted the wheat herself. Now she cleaned the wheat herself. Now the next thing to do was definitely, of course, to go and make the powder out of this wheat. She wanted to make the atta, right? The wheat flour. Because this is how she would be able to actually make her bread. So she again went to all three of them. She went to Mr. Duck and she was like, Mr. Duck, can you at least now help me to make the powder out of the wheat? Let's make some wheat flour. And Duck was like, no, do it yourself. And then she went to, correct, she went to Cat. And Cat said the same thing. The cat was like, meow, make the wheat flour yourself. Make it yourself. I'm busy. And then she went to the dog and the dog was like, whoa. Do it yourself, Little Red Hen. How many times do I say do it yourself? So red hen was really a strong red hen. She was like, nothing doing. I want to have bread. I'm going to make it. So she took her wheat and she went, and in the wheat mill she asked the person who was making this to make a lovely powder out of that wheat grains and give it to her. And she got her wheat flour and she went home. Now, as soon as she made this wheat flour, okay, basically atta, powder, wheat powder, atta, when she took it home, now Mr. Duck and Mr. Cat and Mr. Dog, all three of them came to her kitchen. And they were like, oh, now what are you going to do, Little Red Hen? And Little Red Hen was like, I'm going to make some bread. Do you want to help me make some bread, Mr. Duck? She asked Mr. Duck. And Mr. Duck was like, you did all this by yourself. Why don't you just do this as well? Make the bread yourself. Quack, quack, quack. Then she went to Mr. Cat, and Mr. Cat was like, do it yourself. Make your bread yourself. Make your bread yourself. Make your bread yourself. Make the bread. Little Red Hen, make the bread. And same thing the dog said. Make the bread, Little Red Hen. Make it yourself. Why do you need us? Why do you need us? You did all this by yourself. So make the bread by yourself as well. Now they had a point. And she had also got a point that, okay, fine, I planted the wheat myself, I cut it myself, I cleaned it myself, I went and made atta, wheat flour myself, and now I can make the bread also by myself. So she actually took a recipe. Recipe is how to make a dish, right? How to make bread. She read all of that and she started making bread. And she baked a lovely, yummy smelling bread. And as soon as that hot bread, ask Mama and Papa to show you bread in case you don't know how a bread looks. She removed that bread from the oven and the bread was smelling so good. It was like muh mein pani chuta. The smell was like yummy. And that's when Mr. Duck came running near her window, and so did Mr. Cat came running near her window, and so did Mr. Dog come running near her window, and they all three of them were like standing there waiting for her to start cutting the bread and putting the slices in the plate. Now all this Little Red Hen saw, and she asked all three of them, she looked at all three of them and she was like, oh, my dear friends, you all have come to see what I'm doing, right? You came to see whether I have made the bread or not, and everybody was like, so she looked at them and she asked Mr. Duck, Mr. Duck, do you want to have some bread? And now what do you think Mr. Duck said? Mr. Duck was like, yes, I want some nice hot bread. Then she looked at Mr. Cat and she was like, Mr. Cat, do you want some lovely hot bread? And Mr. Cat was also this time, meow. And she looked at the dog and she was like, Mr. Dog, I'm sure you also want to have some hot, nice bread. And Mr. Dog was like, yes, please give me some bread. What do you think the Little Red Hen did? Do you think Little Red Hen gave them some bread after they had said no to help her, and she did all the hard work by herself? Do you think that she actually gave them some bread? She looked at all of them and she said, you know what? I actually did all the work by myself. I planted the wheat, I cut the wheat, I cleaned it, I went and I made wheat flour out of it. Now I also made and baked the bread. So I should only eat the bread, no? Thank you very much, Mr. Duck and Cat and Dog. I'm going to eat this bread all by myself. If I did all this by myself, then I'm sure I can eat the bread also by myself. And that's what she did. She took some bread in a plate and she sat near the table and she started eating her bread. That's what she did. But you know what? It was Little Red Hen, and she had a lovely, lovely heart. She saw all her friends standing there near the window waiting for that food. Of course, she did eat the bread, but later on she felt a little sad for them. So she looked at all of them and she took a promise from them and she told them that you have to make a promise that next time when anybody, it just shouldn't be your friend, but it could be anyone. It could be your friend, your neighbor, a person you just know, anybody. If somebody needs your help and is asking for help, because it's very, very difficult, right, for us to ask for help. But here she was asking for help. So she told them and she made them promise that next time when somebody is asking you for help, never say no. If you can help, you should definitely help. Come on, promise me. Promise me, Mr. Duck. And Mr. Duck said, I promise. And she was like, promise me, Mr. Cat. And Mr. Cat also said, I promise. And she took a promise from Mr. Dog as well. They all promised her that they would help anyone and everyone who would need their help, and they would be able to help those people. They would definitely. And that's when she cut another 3 slices of hot bread and she gave it to them, and all 4 of them had a lovely meal together. And that's the story of Little Red Hen. Let's say bye, Little Red Hen. See you. I hope you enjoyed the story. I have changed the story a little bit in the end. Yes, because I want my little ones to remember that when somebody is asking for help, if you can, you should definitely help. Yes, it's always nice to help others. On that note, we come to an end to today's story session. I hope you guys had fun. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, which is Mindseed Preschool, and come back with suggestions for more stories. I would love to narrate some of your favorites. So do write into me. Yes? Take care, stay safe, stay inside. Bye-bye.